everybody. Welcome in to Afternoon Live, Michigan Football Live, as we talk about the latest in Michigan sports. We're part of the Maize and Blue Review. Weekdays at 1 o'clock, we're here, part of Rivals.com. We do talk about the latest in what's happening in Michigan sports. Today, we talk about one of Michigan's rivals, their in-state rival, Michigan State, handing out some bling. We will get to that straight ahead here, as if you haven't heard by now, you had Michigan State handing out some hardwood, and they got their Peach Bowl rings. Remember, Michigan State played Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl, and the Spartans got the win, and then they handed out these rings yesterday, and as you might expect, you had both Michigan and Michigan State fans weighing in on this. Now, why Michigan fans were weighing in on it so much is because you have this side of the ring here, but the other side, you have the Michigan and Michigan State score here on one of the rings, on the ring, I should say. And I got to thank Swanky Wolverine on Twitter for making an adjustment on the ring. The one on the left is the Spartans ring. The one on the right is the Swanky Wolverine ring, where he replaced the chopping with the third place finish in the Big Ten East, where Michigan State ended up residing. Now, so this is where you start, and this is where you think of things. So you're like, well, what do you make of MSU and their rings, getting a ring for winning the Peach Bowl? My first thought was, I thought rings were for championships. Peach Bowl champion? I was immediately made aware by Michigan State fans that Michigan had also produced a ring for an Outback Bowl that they were in, that they lost. And the old, but what about, so if you're just asking me if college football teams should get rings for winning a bowl game, I would say no. I would say that rings are for championships. If you win the Big Ten championship, you get a ring. You win the national championship, you get a ring. There shouldn't be any other rings in any other games. Now, you want to say these kids, it's a once in a lifetime thing, going to a bowl game, and you want to play the what about other teams? I think I'll speak for Michigan. Moving forward, in any bowl game that they play, they shouldn't get a ring unless they win the Big Ten. You win the Big Ten championship, you can get a ring, the Big Ten championship game. And then you go on, like if Michigan would have beat Georgia this year, that would have been awesome. I don't think they should have gotten a Orange Bowl ring. I think that it would have been a huge win. It would have got them, obviously into the championship game. I think that if I was a Michigan State fan, I'd say if you wanted to get a little Peach Bowl medallion, you want to put the score of the Michigan game in there. We'll get to that in a second. And it's just like Michigan. If they, in future years, they don't get to the college football playoff and they go to a bowl game, Sugar Bowl, whatever, Rose Bowl, and they're not the Big Ten champ, and they let's say they go to the Rose Bowl, but they're not the Big Ten champ, like Ohio State did last year. Is Ohio State getting rings for playing that game out in the Rose Bowl? No. You want to get a little, like I said, a little pendant, get a little watch, but rings. I mean, when they say how many rings you got, they're talking about how many championships you have. I don't know how many Peach Bowl rings you have. So is it lame? I think overall it's lame. It's yeah, lame. Okay, all right, I'll buy it. It's lame. Don't get a ring unless you're winning a championship. A Peach Bowl championship. It's not a Peach Bowl championship. It's a Peach Bowl game. Give yourself a Peach Bowl medallion and forget about the well, what about Michigan? And just know that it's the contrived. It's as Rasheed Wallace used to say back in the day, it's fugazi. They, hold up the Peach Bowl ring. Woo! No. Well, what about the out boys? Stop with the what abouts. That's where I'm at. I do like the adjustment though that Swanky made on the Spartan ring that they have here. So moving on, more ring talk. Now, Michigan did lose to Michigan State. What about putting the Michigan score on their ring? I've seen some Michigan fans. That's a joke, little brother, all those things. This is the part where it's a little bit different for me. Now, if you go back to this time last year, I was saying that as I looked at the Michigan schedule, that a must-win game on the schedule. I didn't think Michigan was going to beat Ohio State. And I looked to the Michigan State game after Michigan losing the year before. I put the game in East Lansing last year as a must-win. I couldn't see how. I remember Jim Harbaugh coming off the pandemic year and the focus on. I thought that there just wasn't any way that Michigan could lose to Michigan State in East Lansing, and then they did. But as we know now, they won the rest of their games in the conference, and it got them into the Big Ten title game, and so they won the Big Ten. And that is, the objectives, if we're starting them, yes, you would like to win a national championship. And after that, you'd like to get to the college football playoff. You would like to get into the Big Ten title game. You'd like to beat Ohio State. You'd like to beat Michigan State. Those are kind of the pecking order as you go along there. Now, just like if you would tell me like this year, like I think it would be great if Michigan went down and beat Ohio State. If you told me that Michigan took an L against Ohio State, but still, as everything played out, if Michigan was able to get to the Big Ten title game, would I take that right now? An L to Ohio State, but Michigan still getting to the Big Ten title game, and having a chance to get to the college football playoff. Sign me up for that. And yeah, the same thing. It's nobody likes. In fact, it's the worst thing in the world, losing to Ohio State and then losing to Michigan State. It's the worst. But you learn something new every year about fandom, about college football, about your own particular opinions and takes. And last year he's saying, I don't see, you have to beat Michigan State. There's no other way around it. If somebody would say, well, what if you win all the other games? Like, come on. You're like, what's the likelihood of that happening? It's like in Rounders when Matt Damon's going up against KGB the first time around and he loses, I think, 30 grand to him, and Matt Damon peeks down and he's got an ace nine, and he ends up getting a boat, nines over aces. And so, yeah, he shoves it all in. But of course, KGB, he's got his Oreos and he's eating them, but he's got a American Airlines and he ends up winning it. Damon could have had, quads. So there's always a way, around it. I think that's how the hand fell in Rounders. There's always a way. So you have to say, what's likely. And as you talk about it. And so for this particular conversation, would I take an L to MSU if it means winning the Big Ten again for Michigan? That is an easy answer. It's not 99.9% of the people out there that, should say yes. And, one person saying, no, Michigan State, the game means everything. 100% of Michigan fans should say yes. Yeah, that's it. It's the same thing against Ohio State. I don't know if there's any way you could take 2 L's and somehow get into I guess it's possible, right? The objective is getting to the college football playoff and winning the Big Ten. So you can win the Big Ten and still not get into the college football playoff. So that's where you start getting into those 2 losses. There hasn't been a 2-loss team, right? That's been into the college football playoff. So you don't want that. So, you don't want that because that does stop you at some point in this hypothetical game that I'm playing here. But 1 loss can still get you in there. So that's where I'm sitting. Let's just take a look at this Michigan and Michigan State series. And as we sit around talking about it, the one thing as I look at it and think about the Spartans is that I'm going to give you a good look at those rings and the replacement one again. And you see the score 37-33. Do I understand putting the score up there? And yeah, do you understand that Michigan fans are going to be like, hey, we won the Big Ten, but like all the things that I've just said, I think you realize all of that. But putting it all aside for a second, that game, and it's hard to do if you're a Michigan fan. It's hard to do for any game that you're a fan of that you lose, and that is saying it was a great game. Last year's game in East Lansing, the Michigan State game, was a great game. And I'll never forget it's sitting there in the second half and the game being tied 30-30. And I took a step back. I tweeted it out. Whatever happens, this has been a great game. All the things that you want. Now, there's some things that you don't want either. You don't want a call going against you if you're Michigan with Aiden Hutchinson and Ajabo falling at it for a touchdown, which would have been, it was a huge play in the game. You didn't want that being overruled like it was by the officials. That was horrible. And there were a lot of calls there in the second half. You think about them, a bunch of things of the call variety went Michigan State's way, and those things happen. Michigan State, the refs were in their pocket. I don't know, however you say. Also, Michigan State made a bunch of plays in the second half that they really were incredible. Was it back-to-back touchdowns and 2-point conversions? That you mix in some fourth down conversions as well. State just kept making play after play. It was incredible. All of that, Michigan still had their opportunities. McCarthy comes in, fumbles the ball, and then they fumbled it again, right? So it's a couple turnovers there. You can't turn the ball over like that if you want to win in the road. And win on the road. And Michigan did that, and they still had their opportunities there. And it, that quarterback rotation, and the highlight, or one of the things, I don't know if it's a highlight, one of the things that clearly is going to be talked about all this offseason, already has been, the 2 QBs, and a reference point of going back and watching how things can go wrong is the Michigan State game, and how Michigan deployed their 2 QBs there. Oh, yeah, McNamara was in the tent. He wasn't in the tent. He was hurt, and all these different things. But, yeah, it opened yourself up for criticism, that's for sure, when you lose the game like that. And you have some turnovers with the quarterbacks. And, the throws that McNamara had down there before. Oh, no, the one turnover happened. But the other one could have happened. He fumbled it out of bounds. Was it 2 turnovers, right? Now that you start thinking about it, and the wheels start spinning. So all of that, it was a great game. last year. Michigan ended up on the wrong side of it, which ended up sucking. So, uh, the one, and so last year, yeah, they lost. It was horrible, but then the incredible part was, as we all know now, Michigan ripped off the rest of the games in the Big Ten, including Penn State, a miraculous win, dominating performance, one of the greatest games, in Michigan history, beating Ohio State, all of it. Oh, beating Iowa, I don't get tired of talking about it. It was a great Big Ten championship game as well. All, one-sided for Michigan. I didn't mind that. Getting into the college football playoff for the first time, getting to Indy for the first time, all fantastic, great experience. And so, is bitter and the worst thing ever of losing to Michigan State, it was turned around. And all this offseason, like, yeah, I've got state friends myself that, they were even doing it last night, sending me, the pictures of the Paul Bunyan trophy. Like, okay. Was I, sending pictures? No, I wasn't. I said, okay, there you go. Your championship rings. And so that's good for their side, for Michigan State's side. For the Michigan side here, I think about what could have been. If the Michigan didn't win it, it'd be a completely different story. We all know that because I go back to the pandemic year and Halloween night as the 2021 game against Ohio State was one of the greatest games in Michigan football history. No doubt. Was it as good as 97? No, but it's up there. I mean, am I going to put it in the top 5 Michigan games ever, considering that they won the Big Ten, hadn't won it in a long time, got to Indy for the first time, got to the college. Yes, I will put it right up there, nestled up right behind 97. So maybe their second best win in certainly like 25 years, 30 years. One of the greatest wins of all time for Michigan. The year before, and it would have been the Michigan State game, and the loss would have been horrible because you just think about, and if you remember, 2020 Halloween night and Michigan losing in front of cardboard cutouts and the whole thing, the Wildcat with Joe Milton. That was such a nightmare. Remember, Michigan State, they weren't supposed to win any games. On the week before, they played Rutgers. They were turning it over left and right. And look, it was such an embarrassing performance by the Spartans, but then they come in and they beat Michigan. Whoa. That was one of the worst games ever. The 2020 loss to Michigan State is one of the worst games ever. And it is easy now to say, well, but the pandemic. And there's a point there. There are no fans. And look at how some of the other programs performed. The pandemic, call it a one-off. I mean, yeah, everything that was going on, chalk it up to. But, the teams that won that year and the Michigan basketball team who had to go through it, that was a great Big Ten championship for them. So I don't go too far and just be like, but it's easy to do. Just say, that was a one-off pandemic. Forget it. None of that mattered. It mattered. But you can also, you have it as an excuse. You get a little bit of an excuse there. Yeah, you do get a little bit. If somebody wants to argue with me that, well, then it's not a real Big Ten championship game if you're not going to take the law, So there's a point on both of those sides. Whatever makes you feel good. So this year's game in Ann Arbor, how do I feel about that? Do I feel like Michigan, is going to win that game for sure? And just, how do you look at it? Well, I look at it like that Michigan's going to have their full attention. Of course, they should anyways, but this is the funny rivalry. While it's an in-state rivalry and it's been back and forth a lot, you think about Michigan State, what they were able to do. Michigan was down and D'Antonio was there. And look at Tuck, as 2-0. There's a lot of reasons to say, yeah, you of course you're going to completely focus in on Michigan State, but how it works. Michigan fans, and yeah, a big part of it is the rivalry, and it being an in-state rivalry. Michigan, the fans can give no respect to MSU in anything that they do. Almost all Michigan fans, they don't entertain any respect. Look at what things are happening with the championship ring. Look at the stuff that I've been talking about, and I didn't go to Michigan. And I don't usually get in on the rivalry stuff and the pile on, and yet here today it sounds like I am a little bit. It just goes to show that part of this rivalry here is that Michigan State always has the gigantic grudge and respect card to play because Michigan never gives MSU even an ounce of credit for doing anything. And you'd say it's all right, that's fandom, but it does. The former players, they lead the charge on that, and it trickles down, and it factors in. People like to argue. You think that things that happen with the fans and the former players matter? I do think things like that matter. For people that say that if you've got to get jacked up by what some of the opponents say, that, you've never played sports or whatever else, you're a fan of the Flames and the media, I just come back and I'll use a bunch of Michigan and Michigan State players and examples of things that they have said and things and how they have operated in their life. Tom Brady would be one. Tom Brady is always looking for a grudge, some kind of angle. And you would think, Tom Brady's won more than that, and we all know he's the GOAT. But Tom Brady still knows all of the quarterbacks that were picked in front of him in the draft, where he went in the 6th round. And, he's always looking for, that edge like that. And Spartan, I think, Tom Izzo looks at like posting boards and he's like, this 67 Green was saying something. What? Draymond Green was picked in the 2nd round. You ever hear Draymond Green? He knows all of the players that were picked in front of him. And every time that he's playing one of those teams, he uses as a fuel. Now you're telling me that playing the disrespect card, it doesn't matter? That's my argument. Anyways, it's nice to get worked up on a Friday about Michigan football and one of their bigger rivals, their 3rd biggest rival in Michigan State. Well, Michigan, they don't play Notre Dame, their 2nd biggest rival, so State has been bumped up a little bit. You can make the case for it anyways. I just played the game and put them at number 3. I played the disrespect card. Here it is. Go ahead, State. You're the 3rd biggest rival for Michigan football. Take it and chew on that gunpowder all the way till October 29th this year. Go ahead. There it is. There's your disrespect card from Michigan Football Live here on this Friday. All right. Is it a must-win this year for Michigan? Well, you would think so. Being at home and being 0-2, and you imagine the Tuck coming, stuff that's going to happen if the Spartans. But as we just found out last year, that Michigan can go out there and lose that game and yet still win the Big Ten. So you wouldn't want that to happen, but it could. Now, I'll stay with the championships are reserved. The rings are reserved for championships. Twice, I have been able to hold, speaking of championships, I've seen some 97 championship rings. I haven't tried, but 2 Super Bowl rings I have been able to hold and try them on my fingers. One, Rod Payne, former Michigan All-American center, played for the Ravens and won a Super Bowl and has a Ravens Super Bowl ring. And he let me try. And these Super Bowl rings are amazing. And then a few years later, at a charity outing, Larry Foote Jr. happened to be placed at the same table as Foote Jr., And Larry let me hold on to his ring and take a picture, and I have the photo. That is Larry Foote Jr.'s Super Bowl ring. Look at that thing. Look at my nails. Look at my nails right now. They don't look very good. That's beside the point. Look at that. I've been reminded by Steeler fans. We call that one number 6 or something. How many Super Bowls that they've won. But did they put maybe the Ravens beat the Steelers and they got some rings by making the play? I don't know. Try to play the Michigan State card there. You imagine walking around like with that championship ring like big as this. Hey. Yes, we can all just imagine. Well, like I said, I'll take. I'm not for Peach Bowl rings. I'm for Big Ten championship rings. I'm for college football championship rings. I'm not for Lions putting a banner up if they make the playoffs. Do I think the Lions, if they, win the NFC North for the first time in, what are we talking about? Close to 30 years? Is it more than 30 years that the Lions with the NFC North? It was called the NFC Central back then. Should they put a banner up, or should they get a championship ring? Should the Lions get a championship ring if they win, 7 games this year? Come on. That's what we're talking about. But they beat the Bears? Or they beat the Packers? No. If the Lions win the Super Bowl, they should get rings. The Tigers in 2006 and 2012, they won the pennant. And then the next year they brought out rings. I didn't like that. It's great, that they won the pennant. The Tigers win the pennant. It was awesome. But a banner and a championship ring, MSU, is for winning. Now, you can celebrate it. I like the baseball tradition of winning the Central, running around, every playoff, go have a party and touch it off. But what about bling and banners? But what about the Final Four? College basketball is different. So things are different. College basketball, you win the Big Ten. You win the Big Ten tournament. You make the Final Four. That's how it works. In college football, are we getting to where, Michigan State, their kids that are in kindergarten and they finish, you only have 5 kids that, have a show and tell where, they're building volcanoes. They have 5 kids that come in, and a Michigan State's kids, he doesn't win it. He doesn't come in second, but he comes in third. Michigan State fans, should you then give your kid a participation championship ring? All right. We can go on and on all day with this. Everybody have a great weekend. We will be right back at you on Monday here at 1:00.